All right, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. If I could have your attention, please. We're about to start the event. All right, thank you. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of professionals in international trade, the Australia Malaysia Business Council and the Australia Indonesia Business Council, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event, which talks about Industry 4.0 in the ASEAN region. My name is Ernst, and I will be your MC and moderator for the night. Now, before we begin, I'd like to do the welcome to country by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, on whose land we gather today. And I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, I'd like to invite Lauren Montino of Haymarket HQ to say a few words about this wonderful space that we're in. Lauren.
Thanks, Ian. Good evening, everybody. How are you feeling? Yes, I love it. First one to answer. Love the spirit. So, like Leon said, my name is Lauren, and I'm the Community and Operations Manager here at Haymarket HQ. I see a few familiar faces, but who hasn't been here before? Nice. Welcome again. So just to give you a bit of an intro of what we do, what Haymarket HQ is, this beautiful venue that we're all here now. So we're Australia's first startup hub, focused on helping entrepreneurs, founders, startups grow and connect with Asia. So we love opportunities. We're always exploring more opportunities in Asia, and the ASEAN region is one of the things that are emerging and we want to learn more about. So when these guys came to us and we want to host it at HHQ, it's yeah, definitely. That's an easy yes for us. So thank you all for coming tonight. And if you want to learn more about HHQ and what we do, and you want to work with us or work here as well, come find me at the end of the night. And before we go on, just a few more important things as well. Toilets are at the back, behind this white wall. Fire exits are next to the big murals, you'll see the signs, and if something happens, we'll be around to support. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Lauren. Now, just to provide some context for tonight's event, this is the third ASEAN-related event which we've organized amongst the joint ASEAN Business Councils. This time we have Malaysia and Indonesia. And it's the first which we have co-organized with Professionals in International Trade, which is another like-minded organization. Also, this is the first time we've had events at Haymarket HQ. As you can see, it's a wonderful space. And this event, I believe, is timely and relevant given the increasing importance of the ASEAN region. It is our closest neighbor geographically. It is our natural trading partner and economic bloc. It's got a huge population of 650 million, third largest in the world currently. It is undergoing rapid urbanization. It's rich in natural resources. And it's close in proximity to the powerhouse economies of India and China. Also, there is the trend of ASEAN economic integration, where we are seeing the 10 economies come together to form what is already now the 7th largest economy in the world. And this is expected to grow to become the 4th largest economy by 2030. Now, some statistics. ASEAN currently accounts for 11.5% of Australia's exports and 16.1% of Australia's imports. It accounts for 7% of global trade and 6% of foreign direct investment. And there are over 12,000 businesses exporting, or 12,000 Australian businesses exporting to the ASEAN region. And now for tonight, what I encourage you to think about as we go through the evening is to understand the nature of selected Industry 4.0 technologies. So technologies like blockchain, like cloud computing, like robotics, which are going to impact your businesses or organizations. Another aim is to understand what the ASEAN countries are doing in the Industry 4.0 space. So what are the government initiatives to promote transformations in those ASEAN economies. Also to help you identify any business opportunities, how you can tap into business in the ASEAN region, if it relates to Industry 4.0, and finally to initiate conversations and build connections. So we have the trade and investment representatives from different ASEAN countries here. We have business council members, and of course various different businesses in the audience. Now, without further ado, let me now invite the various presidents of the organizations who have come together to host tonight to say a few words. So I'd like to start with Martin Ross Scrumstad from Professionals in International Trade.
Try this one. Thank you, Leanne. Good work pronouncing my name. It's not an easy one. I brought some notes as well to not go too much off note and save the time. My fiance happily tells me that I keep waffling, and I feel now I already started, so I'm going to go back to my notes. So I would first of all like to thank the partners in hosting this event, and as well the panelists who enable us to have the event, and Leanne for leading us through it, both as the MC and as well as the organizer of this. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to learn more about Industry 4.0 in this region of the world, and as well to understand better what kind of opportunity that brings to trade professionals in Australia. And as many of you know, professionals in international trade, we connect and support people who share a common interest for international trade and investment, business, and foreign affairs. And we also aim to create opportunities for our members to connect on a social and a professional level, and to foster long-term relationships and business collaboration. And you can join up with PIT by signing up on pit.org.au, and it's still free. That might most likely change next year, so take advantage of that. And lastly, I want to encourage you all to come along to our AGM on the 25th of November, where we will also hold our elections to the board. So if you're interested in being part of this organization, not just coming to our event, but actually being behind the scenes and being part of deciding what kind of events and what direction the organization takes forward, then that's a great opportunity. And we'll follow up with an email after the event to get you some more information on that. So Monday, 25th of November, keep that date locked in your calendars. So with that, I'll finish off and I'll hand it off to next person. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Now, next up, I'd like to invite Nick Alexander of the Australia Indonesia Business Council to get to say a few words.
Thanks, Leon. The Australia Indonesia Business Council is the peak trade association between Australia and Indonesia. For those of you who don't know what that involves working with government, business, the community to improve the trading relationship between Australia and Indonesia. We've had a big year this year with the negotiation and signing of the IACPA, which is the free trade agreement between Australia and Indonesia. And that's being ratified, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, later this year. So it's a very important milestone, and it's been negotiated on and off since about 2007. And it's been called the first business-led free trade agreement. So we're very proud of our role in coordinating the submissions from business that went into that process. We'd encourage you to have a look at our website, get involved. There are a number of us here tonight to chat. Francisco Wijojo in the back there is also a member of our New South Wales committee, so I encourage you to come and chat to me, Francisco, and Christopher Christian, who's also here somewhere. We'd also like to thank our corporate sponsor who assisted us with participating tonight. That's Arc Blue Capital. which is a leading venture capital firm in Indonesia, specifically focused on the B2C vertical. If you'd like to hear more about Arc Blue, I'd encourage you to visit their website and also speak to Francisco, who also happens to be one of our committee members. Thanks, Leon, and thanks for co-hosting this event with us tonight.
Thank you, Nick. And finally, I'd like to invite Kenneth Kok of the Australia Malaysia Business Council, again, to say a few words.
Hi everyone, apa khabar? Do you like the food? Good satay, right? I'm not going to take a long time to say my speech. What I want to tell you is that join Malaysia Business Council, Australian Malaysia Business Council, if you want to attend events, know people. We currently have 9 events since November, so we're quite active in this space. And hopefully we're going to have another ASEAN event next year. Yes? Yes. And thank you for coming. Visit our website.
Thank you, Kenneth. Now, I'd like to note some key guests in the audience. So first off, we have Alma Argoyoso. She's the Commercial Consul of the Philippines, who joins us today. She'll say a few words later on. We have Salila Tepkasetkul, who is the Trade Commissioner of Thailand. She is one of the panelists. We have Jamie Gibson of the Australia Thailand Business Council. There you are. And then we have Dipsy Altomonte, who is from the Australia Philippine Business Council. Now, just to outline the format of tonight's event, we have sort of 2 major components. The first is a sort of panel discussion, which brings together 4 subject matter experts, from government and industry to talk about Industry 4.0. This should last for around 40-45 minutes. And then the second is a question and answer session that's open to the audience, where you get the chance to grill our speakers, so to speak. That should last for about 10 to 15 minutes. We then will conclude the event with thank yous and appreciations for the speakers and hosts, and this is followed by an additional round of networking to around 8:45. So don't worry, you'll get a chance to enjoy more drinks and food. Now, please note that the panel discussion will abide by sort of Chatham House rules, where participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity or the affiliation of the speakers nor that of any other participant may be revealed. Again, to sort of outline who the panelists are tonight, we have Salila Tepkasetkul, who has extensive experience with the Thai Ministry of Commerce, with a focus on strategic trade policy and planning. We have George Lucas from Raiz Invest. He's got, and brings specialist investment banking and fund management experience to our panel. We have Alison, who is an expert in digital transformation and cloud computing from EY's technology advisory practice. We have Stephen Suhadi, who is joining us remotely from Jakarta in Indonesia. So that shows you the wonders of technology. And he will talk about developments in Indonesia's blockchain sector. Now, before I start, I'd like to invite Alma Argoyoso to say a few words about what the Philippines is doing in their Industry 4.0 space.
Thank you so much, Leon. Hi, guys. Good evening, everyone. Merry Christmas. It's Christmas already, yes? So anyway, thank you so much for having me here. Happy to be here. I was rather a late addition to the panel or to the program, but I'm very happy to talk about what the Philippines is doing in terms of preparing our workforce for Industry 4.0 and what we are doing in terms of innovation and startups. So in the Philippines, of course, we've been talking about Industry 4.0, and it's a big, big buzzword nowadays. And in the Philippines, we've just launched or a few months ago, our Philippine Innovation Act and the Philippine Innovative Startup Act. So what basically this means is that we are really putting innovation at the core of our industrial strategy. So that we are doing through the launching of what we call the Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy, or the IQS, which aims to put innovation at the front and center of our policies, which includes upgrading and developing new skills, developing new industries, creating new products and services. We also aim to build the innovation and the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So to remove obstacles to growth, to attract investments and create jobs, to strengthen domestic supply chains, and participate in global value chains with forward and backward linkages. So we want to link manufacturing with agriculture and services. Now in the Philippines, the industries, the state of the industries right now is that they are in various stages. So some of the industries are still in Industry 2.0, some are in Industry 3.0 or transitioning to Industry 3.0, and others are actually ready to leapfrog to Industry 4.0. And by doing that, by mentioning that, we want to integrate new technologies in our production systems to increase the productivity of our industries and to ensure that new technologies would be accessible to all the sectors and to all the regions. We've focused on just 12 priority sectors. So this includes electronics, automotive, aerospace, the IT BPM, which is a big industry in the Philippines. IT BPM, the IT Business Process Management industry, or what you call the outsourcing industry, which is composed of the voice and non-voice services. So we are now beyond the voice services, what you call the call centers. We are way past that already. We're already focusing on non-voice services, which includes finance and accounting, payrolling, insurance, legal transcription services, analytics, digital analytics, engineering outsourcing services, creative process outsourcing services. So all this higher, what we call knowledge-based outsourcing processes. So IT BPM, agribusiness, construction. As you know, we have a very big program in terms of construction, the build, what we call we're ramping up our infrastructure in the Philippines. With our build program, we're building airports, ports, roads. So that's a big opportunities for businesses to participate in. So furniture, garments, shipbuilding and ship repair, iron and steel, parts, other parts and components of electronics and automotive, and also chemicals. So those are the 12 priority sectors that we are focusing on, wherein the government is really pumping support in terms of incentives, in terms of the manpower resources, the training, the reskilling, the upskilling of the manpower. We also aim to build what we call the Filipino innovation and entrepreneurship, and to bridge the gap, the Filipino innovation and the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we want to do a lot of research and development, commercialization of the projects or the R&D, the creation of new products and services, and by a strong collaboration between and among industry, academe, government, and all of this that are part of the ecosystem. And not only that, but to also bring it, to make it more inclusive and bring it to the regions, so that we decongest Metro Manila and bring it to the countryside. So, because of all of this development, there are new areas that are really opening up in the Philippines, and that includes the Philippine startup ecosystem, which is a $378 million industry in the Philippines. We're just in the activation phase, but there are a lot of opportunities in fintech enterprise solutions, AI, and machine learning. So the startup community in the Philippines, there are about 500 startups, and then supported by government, by industry, by universities, by the accelerators, the incubators, and all of that. And it's just a very young ecosystem, but it's full of potential and embedded capabilities because of the skills of the people. We are 100 million. We have 100 million population, and very young. Younger compared to the rest of the world. 23 years old is the median age of the population in the Philippines. And of course, English-speaking workforce, tech and social media savvy, and 96.3% literacy rate. So for instance, in the Philippines, we have 100 million population. There are 124 million Filipinos with mobile subscriptions. But imagine we only have, in terms of credit card penetration, that's just 1.9% of the population. And so there's still a huge space to cover. Have account with financial institution, 34%. Make online purchases or pay bills online, that's 9.9%. So really just very, very small, and there's still a lot of ground to cover. So there's a lot of opportunities in terms of financial technology services that the startups could really work on. So of course there are massive problems like traffic, and then we are an archipelagic country. We're divided by waters. So connecting the country is really a challenge. So those are just some of the opportunities that are opening up in the Philippines. Of course, everybody is talking about being an AI center in the region, and that is also the vision of the Philippines, to be an AI center of excellence in the region, with focus areas on AI applications such as data science, data analytics, and AI conductor. So we are building our pool of data scientists to be able to do all of this. And we're partnering with universities and with companies in Silicon Valley to enable us to really be able to do all the programs as regards to our vision of becoming an AI center of excellence. So to close, I guess my message is to just say that we are here, we are ready to partner with you, and let's continue the conversation after this program. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Alma, and great to see that the Philippines is on the front foot when it comes to an Industry 4.0 strategy. Now I'd like to invite our panelists to come forward. First off, we have Salila. Please join me. We have George Lucas from Raiz Invest. And finally, Alison Cairns from Ernst & Young. And then we have Stephen joining us from Jakarta. Now, Stephen, just checking the audio here. Can you hear us?
Yep, you're fine.
And we can hear you, which is great. All right. So to begin, I'll ask the speakers, if you could, yes. Yep. I'd ask the speakers if you could share with, our audience members, your background, the organization you work for, what you do with that organization, and your experience and expertise, or related to Industry 4.0. So Salila, we'll start with you.
Okay, good evening everyone. I'm Salila Tepkasetkul. I'm the Trade Commissioner of the Thai Trade Center. Anyone of you know about the Thai Trade Center? Anyone of you heard about the Thai Trade Center before? Yes, 1, 2, 3. Oh, good. And how about the rest? It's just like a 2 or 3% in this room. If I ask another question, anyone know about the Australia? Yes, I'm sure that everyone knows Australia. I'm doing the same with the Australia, but in the opposite way, Australia like to support and promote the Australian company to connect with the other company around the world. But for me, support the Thai business to connect with the other company in the world. Like I'm based in Australia, so my responsibility is Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific country. So I support and facilitate the Thai business to match with the potential importer in Australian country. So, and my background, work for the Thai government, Ministry of Commerce, I think more than 20 years. And my education background is for economics and e-commerce. Yes. That's the big one, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Salila. George, if you could please share with us your background.
Sure. Hi, my name's George Lucas. I'm the CEO and founder of Raiz Invest, which is a fintech company here in Australia and in Indonesia at the moment. My background, I actually studied computer science many, many moons ago. Since then, I've entered financial services, worked for extensive periods in London, as well as places like New York and Chicago, and eventually ended up back here in Australia, where I was able to combine both my finance knowledge and the computer science knowledge to deliver Raiz Invest to the Australian population here.
Thank you, George. Alison?
Hi, my name's Ali Cairns. I work for EY. I'm a technologist. Most people never think that the lady in the floral dress is the technologist. So I lead our industry for education and at the same time digital transformation. I spent 10 years as a partner at Accenture where I led our Asia Pacific cloud business. I did a lot of work in ASEAN. I love the Philippines. My background before that was outsourcing. So when you were talking about IT BPM, I was over there wetting my pants with excitement. That was brilliant. You know, definitely Philippines is a very, very exciting place. And in the region, to be an AI hub and to have artificial intelligence and intelligent automation and data science, unreal. So love what we do. I actually think in Australia, we need to be a lot more nimble. The real smarts actually come out of ASEAN. We have legacy in Australia. In ASEAN, there is no legacy. They can be completely nimble. And we used to talk about technology as a leveler. So it's no longer the large that will eat the small, but the fast that will outrun the slow. So very excited about what we're doing in ASEAN.
Thank you, Alison. And Stephen in Jakarta. Hello.
Hey everyone. Hope you guys can hear me okay. So a little bit of background about me. I was born in Indonesia, but I actually grew up in Sydney, hence the accent. So I moved back to Jakarta around 3 years ago. Before that in Sydney, I was Product and Innovation Director at Fairfax Media, which is now part of Nine Media Group. And then now in Indonesia, aside from running Asosiasi Blockchain Indonesia or the Indonesian Blockchain Association, I am also the co-founder of ICN, Indonesia Crypto Network, which is essentially a user acquisition engine focused on cryptocurrency and blockchain projects. So a little bit about the association. The association was founded around 2 years ago. At the time when we started the association, there was only about 6 players in Indonesia, and the association is an association of companies, not individuals, in blockchain or blockchain-related fields, including digital assets. At the time, there was no regulation. It was very frontier. Over the last, say, 6 to 9 months, the industry in Indonesia has exploded, essentially. By way of example, now we have around 30 plus members from the 6. We actually have a lot more incoming, but we filter them out. So we don't accept everyone immediately. They go through a bit of a ringer to enter the association. Also in Indonesia, when we first started, there was only 2 exchanges. Now there's around 30 exchanges in Indonesia, or entering the market. There's literally one entering almost every 2 weeks that come and meet me. So from the association perspective, we interface heavily with government. In Indonesia now, cryptocurrency or digital assets, as it's sort of referred to here, is a legal commodity in Indonesia. There's also trading rules out already for exchanges who want to get a license, which take effect next year. So we liaise heavily with the government on that aspect, as well as things like tokenization, ICO, STOs, IEOs, and things of that nature. From a blockchain perspective, we interface with a lot of government and a lot of big conglomerates in Indonesia on enablement and education of blockchain. Again, by way of example, 2 months ago, we had a session with the regulator around Libra. And just yesterday, we had a session with the central bank around central bank digital currency. So the appetite here has dramatically shifted from when I started this journey to where it is today. It basically went to a massive, started from a big stigma, like, Bitcoin is a scam, that whole thing, to now basically like, let's get into blockchain, let's lead blockchain. And the appetite is extremely palatable, not only from a corporate or conglomerate perspective, but especially from a government perspective. They understand the value that this new technology can sort of bring. And the speed at which they want to move is extremely fast. Having lived in Australia, worked in corporate there all my life, I think the pace here and you sort of feel the heartbeat and the flow here, and things just happening much faster. The appetite for investment is a lot faster. So stepping back a little bit as well, I guess, on this from a personal perspective, like when I was in Australia, you sort of are in a little bit of a bubble, and you sort of look to, I guess, the States a little bit more. And I guess events like this, and especially with the speakers around today, you can sort of get a sense of what Southeast Asia is going to be. It's essentially like, for lack of a better word, probably a juggernaut rising up, and it's the closest next door neighbor that we have to Australia. And I think for us as Australians, we need to start looking towards Southeast Asia as opposed to looking towards the States, because there's an abundance of opportunity here. Like if you spend a little bit of time, just a week in Jakarta, Manila, Bangkok, wherever it may be, you'll get offered basically a ton of business opportunities, which I guess in Australia are around, but not as at the pace and at the sort of scale you're talking about when you're coming to Southeast Asia.
All right, thank you for that, Stephen. Now, given the topic of tonight is about Industry 4.0, I'd like to ask members of the audience, how many of you can define succinctly what Industry 4.0 is? What can you understand what it means? Anyone in the audience?
I think George can.
I'm not getting to speak, which is why I'm on the panel.
As a second.
All right, so as you can see, only a few people. So Salila, I'll begin first with you. Can you define what Industry 4.0 means? Can you give us some examples of technologies?
Okay. At first, I think everyone in this room know about Industry 4.0. To it? No one heard about it? Really? So, yeah, Industry 4.0, that means there will be 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, right? Now we are in the state of 4.0, but it's a limited time, so I will not talk about in the past. We will focus in the present and future. Why we talk about 4.0? Someone told me that Industry 4.0 is about the smart industry, transformation industry. If we look at the Industry 4.0, there are many technologies that can be used in the Industry 4.0, such as the big data. I know everyone in this room know about the big data, means the AI, artificial intelligence, right? And robotic or human and machine learning or anything that are like the technical term of the technology that can use in the Industry 4.0. For me, I think Industry 4.0 is about the industry revolution. So you can use like the advance of the technology in every process of your manufacturing and production. Like you can monitoring, control the production process real time by you can use the machinery, and so you can control everything with the technology. But the most important thing, not just the technology, is about the data. Because once you use the technology, you can capture all data from the production side and consumer side. And then you can use that data to be your information.
to improve your production, improve in the part of the production process and the consumer behavior, or maybe you can change your revenue model. I have one startup in Thailand. They involved with the construction industry. When they start, they just use the platform, like the compare price for the category of the construction material. But they can use the information from their customer to company the customer relationship, and they can connect with the big company that provide the supplier. So the revenue model can change if you can apply the data to your business. So that I think what is the industry 4.0 mean.
Right. Okay, so very interesting. So an emphasis on data.
Yeah.
Yep. And now I understand that Thailand has got a Thailand 4.0 strategy. Can you share, with us, what that's all about? What's driven it? What are some of the objectives? And what are the priority sectors that they're focusing on?
Yeah, the word of the Thailand 4.0, I think it came from last 4 years. The government launched the Thailand 4.0 policy. Why we think about to launch the Thailand 4.0 policy? Because we would like to move Thailand forward and come across over the middle income country. And we think that the innovation, technology, and creativity is the key driver for the Thailand economy. So the government launched the Thailand 4.0 and aim to focus to use the innovation, technology, and creativity in every part of the economic model. So we transforming every part, we transforming the farmer, traditional farmer to smart farmer, traditional SME to startup. But we don't say that we will forget about the SME and focus about startup. No, we will promote both SME and startup, because two types is totally different, And we transform the low value services to high value services. And the Thailand 4.0 policy is we follow the 20 years national strategic plan. We have 20-year national strategic plan that focus we would like to strengthen from within. That means we have to build and create the strength inside country, And after we have competitiveness, we will connect to the other. We will connect to the global community under the philosophy of sufficient economy for my late king. Yeah. That's the theme of Thailand 4.0. We will move to the value-based economy. We also have the 10 priority sectors. Like the Philippines, you have 12 priority sectors. Thailand, we have 10. So I just remember one that I don't have is about the construction. I don't have about the construction. But we focus about the airport. Yeah, because we would like to be like the airport hub for the ASEAN. Yes. If you would like to know about the 10 priority sectors, it's a lot, like the automotive, smart electronic, medical and wellness, right? And the food, because Thailand is the food valley of the ASEAN. Automation, robotic, aviation, biofuel, and biochemical. That's all the 10 priority sectors for the Thailand 4.0.
All right, thank you, Salila. Now, George, I think you bring a very interesting, perspective to the panel, being an actual business that's operating, at the intersection of financial services, and technology. Can you share with us, what this means? How do you, what are the developments you see occurring in the fintech space, and also your journey, with Raiz Invest?
Okay, so let's start off with the journey. Raiz Invest started off as a company called Acorns in the US. and it's a full stack financial services product. So that means it's administration, operations, fund management, registry, customer communication, and marketing all in one package. And so that means we can run, for example, the Australian operation, which looks after about 200,000 active customers every day, with 12 people when we take away the programmers who help maintain the system. So it's a very efficient financial services company, and it's done that through the technology, and that includes KYC customers and AML and customers, anti-money laundering onto the platform as well. It's quite an innovative step. And we began, as I said, in the US with a company called Acorns. Eventually I went into a joint venture with them and brought Acorns to Australia in 2016 we launched. And then after we launched in late 2016, actually Nick Alexander and I went up to Indonesia and started talking in Indonesia about delivering the product into Indonesia. At the same time, the SC from Malaysia began to contact us and say, can we bring the product up into Malaysia? We've had same has happened with the SEC in Thailand, where they've come down and contacted us to bring the product up into Thailand. And one of the reasons for this is because it broadens the reach into capital markets. And so everyone's talking about financial inclusion in these ASEAN areas. It's not here to deal with the unbanked. You do get investment into capital markets. You do need to have a bank account to do it, but it is beginning to create more financial inclusion. So if you have a look at a country like Indonesia, Indonesia has 1.4 million people out of 270 million people who use mutual funds. Yeah, at least 60% of that's double counting. Yeah, so it's probably even less than that. And that's actually quite interesting because they have 2 million people who actively trade on Bitcoin. So there's more people who actively trade on Bitcoin than are investing into the capital markets into Indonesia. And one of the OJKs, which is the regulator in Indonesia's KPIs, is to increase this inclusion in the capital markets. So that obviously has made our journey inside Indonesia probably a little bit easier than it could be. It's not like we got really any favors, because we, as a foreign company coming up into Indonesia, we still had to go through more rigorous hoops than, say, an Indonesian startup. But we all had the same common goal, which was to increase the number of Indonesians who are using capital market products in Indonesia. And that's what Raiz has done in Australia. In Australia, we've had over 1 million downloads. We have 200,000 active users. So, 1% of the Australian population is using Raiz every day. And our target market's really only between 23 and 40. So if you take that out, we've probably got 3% of people between 23 and 40 are using the Raiz app on a daily basis in Australia. So we've had quite good market penetration. And obviously, the other beauty about the Raiz product is a mobile phone delivered app. And so countries like in the ASEAN region have skipped the PC. So PC penetration, especially at home, is only roughly about 11%, say, for Indonesia. But yet, smartphone penetration is a lot higher. And so Raiz being delivered over a smartphone is the perfect way to deliver innovative, high-tech solution to populations in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Philippines, where they've skipped the PC and they've moved straight to smartphone. And ever since the Android and the inclusion of Chinese or Indian smartphones into the market, the smartphone penetration in all those markets has been increasing quite dramatically because the cost of the smartphone has come down significantly. So in Indonesia now, 85% of smartphones will be Android-based smartphones, just because no one can afford to pay $1,200 US for an iPhone when you can buy the same technology for $600 and a pretty good phone for $200 or $300. And so Indonesia would be Google's largest customer, for example, in the world, both from social media and from Android. And our advertising strategy is on social media, and fortunately these countries love social media, and so we have being able to go down Facebook, Instagram, and Google channels is the way that we market and communicate our message, and that works perfectly in these countries which are very addictive to social media. Indonesia is very similar to Australia in some ways. One of the big differences is that Instagram is far larger than Facebook, for example, in Indonesia. Yeah. However, the algorithms for marketing down the Instagram channel are exactly the same as marketing down the Facebook channel. So we only launched the app about a month ago in Indonesia, and we continue to learn. It is a learning experience, but I think I should back up some of Stephen's statements, is that Indonesia moves very quickly. Once you've got your ducks lined up, it may take a little bit of time to get your ducks lined up, but when you get your ducks lined up, it moves very quickly. And there's a lot of change happening in Indonesia, and it's happening very quickly. We were having this discussion 2 years ago. No one would ever think that Gojek would not be dominating the market. Now Grab dominates the Indonesian market in ride sharing. So things happen a lot quicker. The government just came out and said, oh, we want to consolidate all the 5 major national payment wallets into one called Link Aja. And within about 3 or 4 months, the Link Aja app was on the market, and all the banks and the national telecom company were being moved onto the Link Aja platform, and their e-wallets were being removed. So they can move very quickly, and so it's not a slow pace, and it does keep you on your feet.
And why did Raiz Invest choose Indonesia to expand into versus the other ASEAN countries?
Nick told me I had to go there. But besides that, Raiz is based on population. Yeah, and so obviously Indonesia as the 4th largest populous country is obviously the first choice. Yeah, to go there. The second thing, it was much easier to negotiate with the Americans because they really had no idea what was happening in Indonesia anyway, so it's a lot easier to say you want Indonesia than you want China with them because they have no idea what the population of Indonesia was. Don't laugh, that's true. And then, because their concept of Indonesia is Bali, and that's about it. Yeah?
I don't think it's very different from Australia's concept.
It's a very big generalisation, but it is pretty much for the average American, it's Bali, and that's it. And then, which is probably not that far away from Australia, which is sad but true. And then, because of the contacts we had with Nick, it was very easy to find a partner up there. But as everyone keeps talking about, and which is very true, it's close to Australia. It's a 6-hour flight to Jakarta. Yeah, you can actually, people forget. It's not mainland Australia, but you can fly to Australia in 40 minutes from Jakarta. You can fly for 40 minutes from West Timor into Darwin. It is right on our doorstep, and so that being able to fly up there quickly is quite a benefit. It's like flying to Perth, and no one really thinks about flying to Perth, but so, flying to Jakarta is not really that much time different. The only pity is that they always have to have the overnight flight, and it's just too short to sleep.
Corroborate that. I mean, having studied in Perth, like the distance between Perth and Sydney is greater than that between Perth and Jakarta.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's actually a closer country. Thank you, George. Now, Alison, Industry 4.0 is a buzzword, but digital transformation, is another, catchphrase that we have nowadays. Can you share, with us what that really means?
Oh, look, excellent question. The one that I hate, and people say innovation, I always go, oh, that's fascinating. What are you going to innovate? And usually when they tell you what they're going to innovate, so actually that's not innovation, you're just improving it a little bit. So digital transformation is a bit like that as well. Everyone thinks that digital transformation is technology. We work with a lot of clients in Australia and ASEAN on their transformation, and they will come to us and say, I'm a tech partner, I'm a technologist, and they'll say what we want to do is digital on the inside. So we need to replace our ERP system, and we want a new Oracle system or a Workday or a NetSuite or an SAP. To which we say that's fascinating. If you're going to replace your finance system, you know what your finance system does, right? It records journal entries. So how's that going to help you be digitally transformed? A lot of organisations, particularly in Australia, don't understand that the digital transformation is a business transformation. So you have digital enablement, which is the guts of your system, or we call that the digital core. And then you have digital engagement, which is how you connect out with your customers. And rule of thumb, for every dollar you spend in digital engagement, you'll spend $1,000 on digital enablement. So what that tells you is your legacy systems cost you a fortune, and it costs an awful lot of money to change those out. So digital transformation does not mean let's put some more systems in. What it does mean, though, is we start to introduce things like analytics. So we're starting to mine the data. Data is the new oil. So, for example, in education, we can now predict if a child is in year 7, what they're studying, we will be able to predict their ATAR. And then we can actually step in and say, this child is predicted to have an 80 ATAR. To get a 90 ATAR, we will actually need to have this intervention. So that's a digital transformation. If any of you have got children and have had to go to your parent-teacher night, where you've got your 5 minutes with the teacher, and they start with, usually they don't know who your child is, but they actually run down, they look at your name, and then they run down the list and say, your child in the last test got this result. You know, that's how useful is that? It's not. So digital transformation means that as a parent, I can see what my child is doing in school, how they're tracking, what interventions they've been, what she's particularly good at, what she's going to be able to do for future of work. And then we have a look at things like intelligent automation, and lots of our clients actually have old legacy systems, and they, you know, to replace them, it's going to cost $100 million. Are you really going to do that? Or are you going to run intelligent automation across the top? So when we look at ASEAN, there is no legacy. So the coolest thing is everything is cloud enabled. So suddenly we have really nimble organizations. So traditionally, with technology, we used to depreciate stuff over 5 to 10 years. Now we plug in, take out. Plug in, take out. If you're in ASEAN, and you're talking about what you're doing in the Philippines or talking about what you're doing in Thailand, you don't have a legacy. You can spin up a cloud system, make a decision about what you're doing. If you want to fail fast and it's not working for you, you turn it off. So digital transformation is about making your business nimble. It's about engaging with your clients differently or your customers, but it's digital engagement and digital enablement. So how's that for some buzzwords?
Yes, very interesting. And now, having defined it, you know, what do you see are the key challenges, you know, from a business sort of adopting or, you know, enabling, embedding, you know, digital transformation? Like, you know, are there leadership problems? You know, are there cultural problems? Like, you know, what are the issues?
Significant, absolutely.
And what are some of the proposed solutions?
Yeah, so look, one of the things we always make a joke of is it's a $100 fine if we actually hear anyone say, but that's how we've always done it. And so there's a couple of things. So if you think of a technology company, even if it's the traditional ones, you know, their interest. But years ago, we had the magic smoke. As technologists, we were the people with the magic smoke. So what we did is said, look, don't you touch our systems. We're really important people, and we know exactly what we're doing. You will pay us a lot of money, but we own all of the magic smoke. That doesn't exist anymore. So you have technology organisations rocking up to the traditional businesses and saying, listen, look, we're the experts. What you need to do is remove that really old system and put in a really expensive new one. And they've got this horrible saying, it's called out of the box. That is the biggest lie you've ever heard. Okay, it is not out of the box. So what they say is, don't worry, just pop this in, and then you just work to all of our business processes, change all of yours, because ours are good, right? And they'll work. That never works, ever. So that's the traditional way was inside out. Now we go outside in. So the very first thing we say to the organisation is, let's have a look at what you will actually do. What will your business processes look like once you're digitally enabled? And let's work to that. 9 times out of 10, you actually don't need to replace the big old systems. You can leave them in there. How many of you love Service New South Wales now? Can anyone remember when you used to have to go and register your car? You wanted to shoot yourself, right? Or you wanted to shoot somebody. It just wasn't fun, right? But if you think of the experience now, They changed all of the business processes so that when you go on online, it tells me that my car needs registering, my license is due. I have a fishing license apparently. I think my husband might have given me that one. And my boat license when that's due. And my children have $200 sporting vouchers that need to be downloaded. Their business processes changed completely to see me as the customer. They call that digital citizen. And that, I think, is what we're talking about. So any organisation that understands that the client or the customer is at the centre and starts from business process and then goes down to technology is on a winner. Unfortunately, in Australia, there's probably about 5% of the organisations that get that. But the coolest thing about ASEAN, everything is new. So we just don't have to, and culturally, we don't have to have that conversation about this is the way we've always done it. It's constantly about how will we do it better.
I think when you talk about, the Service New South Wales example, that digital transformation is, a winner. I think that's really right, true. Because I remember reading in the newspapers like 1 or 2 days ago, they tried putting driver's licenses on the Service New South Wales app, and the app crashed, which just shows how, oversubscribed, how popular it is.
Well, I just did it. It works now.
There we are. It works?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, sounds like EY might have been involved.
Yeah. Perhaps.
All right, thank you. Now, Stephen in Jakarta. So, now, given you have expertise in the blockchain space, can you share with us what blockchain actually means?
Yeah, that's a pretty big question. Sure. So I guess the crux of it is, for those of you, I guess who've heard this buzzword blockchain floating around, and why people are calling it like the new internet, etc. The internet was all about connection. Blockchain is all about consensus on top of the internet. So now you can have basically the same level of ownership and value transfer that you do in the physical space that you do in the digital space, right? That's probably like the shortest non-techie way to explain it. I do have a non-technical presentation, but maybe for another day. Essentially, yeah, blockchain is a consensus technology that allows for things like efficiency, transparency, to basically happen a lot faster. And where it gets really interesting is, for example, like in countries like Indonesia, where it's fragmented and decentralized from a topography point of view. There's like 14,000 or 17,000 islands in Indonesia. There's over 300 dialects in Indonesia. For Indonesians just to do business with Indonesians and to reach consensus amongst ourselves is a bit of an effort. So with Industry 4.0 things and technologies like blockchain coming into play, we're able to basically facilitate more efficient and faster trade, hopefully domestically as well as internationally. There's obviously a plethora and constellation of use cases that also opens up in anything from, I guess, what George was alluding to, starting to reach out to the unbanked, to credit scoring, to origin of food, etc. So it opens up a lot of different use cases and a lot of business models, to be honest. Fundamentally, I believe Indonesia, they're probably going to kill me for saying this, is not the place for blockchain innovation, but it is the perfect place for blockchain adoption. Because of the amount of problems and fragmentation and layering, basically, that Indonesia and other countries in Southeast Asia and other developing countries sort of face. I'll give you an example. So in Indonesia, like if you have a factory, let's say your factory is producing toothpaste, from your factory getting the toothpaste down to a warung. So a warung is a small kiosk on the side of the road, like a nano mini market, if you will. There's up to about 14 layers of middlemen from the factory to the warung. 14 layers, if you can imagine, right? So the reason why there's currently 14 layers is, one is trust. So the factory just first does not trust to deal with like all of these people at the bottom of the so-called pyramid. So they basically, all they do is have half a dozen distributors, right? And then those half a dozen distributors have another half dozen distributors and so on and so forth, right? So basically, all these factories in Indonesia, they have zero clue how their product is getting to their corner shop. They have zero clue, right? So with things like blockchain providing transparency, they're able to cut out the middleman and operate faster, and that delivers value not only for them, but also ultimately delivers value for the end customer. I guess stepping back a little bit, why technologies like blockchain, AI, IoT, etc., become interesting in a 4.0 environment and become extremely interesting when applied to developing countries. And something that I think a lot of people who sort of come from developed countries tend to forget is there's a lot of problems in developing markets, big developing markets like Indonesia, that you just simply do not face in Australia, right? So the other day I was at a conference and someone from Korea approached me and said, like, why are there all these unbanked people in Indonesia? Yeah, we can just do this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, we don't even have those building blocks. And by those building blocks, like, we don't have basic identity in Indonesia. Like, that's not a thing, right? Basic credit scoring in Indonesia, again, not a thing, right? So the fundamental building blocks that a lot of startups and enterprises use in Australia, in Europe, in the US, just don't exist yet in countries like Indonesia. I mean, it's not fully developed. So there's an opportunity as well as a challenge, right? And I think one of the it's like in Jamaica, is they see this big barrage, and they see this sort of allure of like, holy crap, it's like the 4th largest population in the world. It's like around the corner, you know, it's underdeveloped, etc., etc. But the biggest mistake is a lot of companies fail to account for the local nuances that it takes to gain traction in Indonesia. There's a lot of nuances, and the way you do business in Indonesia is fundamentally different to how you do business, for example, in Australia, right? Indonesia is essentially a relationship-based economy. So having the right relationships basically lubricate how fast your business can go. And having an understanding of the local nuances, for example, like, oh, why don't people believe in a bank? Let alone, like, why do people need to believe in crypto? You need to understand that deep-rooted cultural nuances to basically gain traction in markets like Indonesia. That's why, for example, like, we run a user acquisition agency in Indonesia for crypto companies, and you know, our repeat clients include people like Binance, OKX, Upbit, Tezos. Like, these are the biggest names in blockchain crypto in the world, right? And why they end up working with a firm like ours is they realize that we understand the cultural nuances, we understand the market. So I guess for people in the room looking to do business in Southeast Asia, I always say, yes, as George sort of alluded to, it is fast and it can be extremely fast once you have your ducks aligned. But Indonesia can also be, you need to approach it with a mindset of a marathon, not a sprint. If you expect to come in and be like, yep, I'm gonna have, I don't know, 100,000 users in 6 months, I think you're daydreaming a little bit. Once you have your ducks aligned, yeah, that can easily come about. But you do need to approach it like a marathon and not a sprint, is one. The second one is leverage local connections and local partners. That just basically skips you know, the pain and the time of like learning all these little nuances that you might not know. So finding good local partners and people with experience, I think, better ensures success. Coming back to the topic of blockchain here in Indonesia, as I mentioned, the ecosystem is growing. Big corporates are getting in, so I was basically speaking to the second or the top 5 largest conglomerates here in Indonesia about how to use blockchain. BCA Bank, which is the largest bank in Southeast Asia by users. We are currently running a nationwide blockchain competition with BCA Bank. And the response from that has been outstanding, to be honest. So I can already see that this is going to be extremely ripe, essentially, for anyone who wants to come in. Hence why, you know, all the big guys in blockchain and crypto are starting to enter this market. Especially now, there's regulation clarity as well, and there's support by the government to give further clarity, which gives basically foreign companies a big peace of mind when doing business in Indonesia.
Right, thank you, Stephen. Now, I recently read that Indonesia is, I believe, the first ASEAN country which is actually looking into establishing a digital currency. Do you want to share with us a bit more about that? What are the developments? Is that gaining traction?
Sure. I can't share everything because we liaise with the central bank quite a little bit, so I can't share exactly like how far progressed or not progressed that is. Essentially, the only acceptable currency in Indonesia is still the rupiah, so you cannot sell water for Bitcoin, or you can't sell water for USD for that matter. The only recognized currency is Indonesian rupiah. They are starting to consider using digital currency, and if I'm very honest, the driver for that is not actually just Libra or crypto. The bigger driver for that, I believe, is actually e-wallets. So for those of you who've come or visited Indonesia lately, if you go to the malls, and what George was sort of alluding to, there's basically currently a war of payment solutions, right? So between GoPay, which is owned by Gojek, which is a on-demand ride-hailing service, OVO, which is also a local payments e-wallet provider, Dana, which is backed by Alibaba, essentially, and Link Aja, which is the state-owned version of the payment gateways, right? So people now in Indonesia, they don't need a bank account. Everything's being paid using QR codes on your phone. So this culture over the last 2 years, and which is still ongoing now, is being built of cashless payments. So Indonesians now are starting to trust that, oh, okay, I trust the amount that I see on my phone. Whereas previously, like, they need to feel and touch money, like physical fiat, right? So this trend of e-money is actually converging with the trend of blockchain digital currency. So digital currency and e-money is driving Bank Indonesia to start looking at a centralized currency. But so they do have an internal presentation, which I can't comment too much about, that they never ever share externally. But next year, Bank Indonesia will release a document on their perspective on what a national blockchain-based currency would mean for them. For now, they're basically monitoring digital assets or cryptocurrency. There are 2 projects in Indonesia which run a rupiah-based stablecoin, who are in dialogue with Bank Indonesia as well. So they're using that as sort of a guinea pig, and we're across that. They're also members of our association. But Indonesia, I think, is fairly progressive in looking at a solution, potentially a blockchain-based solution for their for their national currency. Singapore also is fairly progressed in the region, and I would say Thailand as well is fairly progressed. Having spent time in Manila, Manila operates the same way, or is mirrored to US regulation. So if it's not really happening in the US, I don't feel like it's going to happen in Manila. But I guess in the region, Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore would probably be leading the charge.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Very insightful information there. Now, I'm sure we would all like to hear more, from our panelists, but given the interest of time, I'd like to open it to the floor, for the audience to ask questions of our panelists. So, we have about, 10 minutes for about 2 or 3 questions. So, would anybody like to, know a bit more about Industry 4.0 in the ASEAN region, which our panelists haven't covered yet? Questions, anybody? Just raise your hand and we'll pass you a mic.
Okay, pass the mic, please.
We'll grab the first one. So I know there's a lot of, at least from our side, as I'm also working with UNICEF Australia, and as a matter of fact, today one of my colleagues is launching a partnership with the philanthropy cryptocurrency organization in Australia. And I was wondering, when it comes to Industry 4.0, what are the outcomes you expect kind of for the better of the world? What are the benefits to people and the countries where you have these new technologies emerging across the board, if anyone feels? For example, opening up of new finance markets.
Oh, great, thanks. Well, one of the benefits is obviously financial literacy and improved ability to manage their finances. You know, one thing is bringing in, you know, cryptocurrencies will help bring in the unbanked, for example, in Indonesia, because even though they may not have a bank account, they do tend to use the e-wallets on their phone. So that's obviously one benefit. It's also the generation of just new jobs that would never imagined before. So, you know, one of the benefits, again, sorry, I just do a lot of examples from Indonesia because I'm more familiar with that. But one of the benefits, obviously, is when you order something from Tokopedia in Indonesia, you'll get it in Jakarta within about 1 to 2 hours, delivered to your front door. And so it's created a whole new industry. You know, so Gojeks and Grabs are not just doing people moving, they're doing the last mile logistic moving. So there are all these new industries and new jobs which will be developed, which no one really ever imagined. So at the moment, you know, Amazon's working its heart out to be able to deliver stuff in New York in 24 hours. And in Indonesia, it's now that you know, after about 2 hours, people will get angry if it's not delivered to you from when you order it on the internet. And so, you know, jobs that just didn't exist before are going to come out of the woodwork because of these digital transformations that are going on. And so in countries like Australia, where the impact is not really that big, in ASEAN countries, the introduction of mobile phones and smartphones and new ways of doing things is actually having quite a big life-changing experience on people because they have skipped the PC. And these changes are actually life-changing compared to people in Australia, where it's just a small differential of moving from a PC to a mobile phone.
Thank you, George. Another question? Yep.
Hello. On one way of looking at it, the level of Australian investment in ASEAN countries is appallingly low. I was looking the other day at the level of investment in Thailand. I think it was in the single-digit billions or something. It's very small compared to the importance of these nations. Question to any of the panelists, anything that can be done here to encourage our businesses to invest in ASEAN countries? And take that at any level you like. I expect the drivers for SMEs to invest will be different to the drivers for institutions like you know, super funds, and different again to, you know, up at the fund level or across at the fund level. But yeah, any comments on that?
Thanks for the question. I think for Thailand, we like the open economy so we open for international company to invest in Thailand. And the government has many incentives for the foreign direct investment. Not just only the tax incentive, but we also have the non-tax incentive as well. For the tax incentive, you can get the exemption for the personal income tax or the corporate income tax or the import duty if you import some like the machinery or to the research and development in Thailand, you will get the import duty exemption. And for the non-tax incentive, we issue the smart visa for the talent worker, and we also have like the land ownership for the foreign direct investment. But there are many criteria to get the incentive. For example, you have to invest in the special economic zone. For example, we have the big project that we call the Eastern Economic Corridor that covers 3 provinces from the eastern side of Thailand. The Thailand put money more than 55 billion Australian dollar in the first 5 years to create the 3 provinces to be the hub for the special economic zone. If you invest in that area, you will get more incentive from the government. This is just only one example. Yeah.
Thank you. And one more question. Yep.
Hi everyone, my name is Vincent. Nice to meet you guys. So my question is, as we are moving into Industry 4.0, a lot of countries in Southeast Asia want to become the hub, like Indonesia wants to become the hub, Thailand wants to become, Philippines wants to become, Malaysia wants to become the hub, Singapore also wants to become the hub. And a lot of our government actually made some changes in regulations in order to ensure that we are ready to face Industry 4.0. One of the reasons I think is because they wanted more direct investment to the country. And the question is, what should be the priority of the government to ensure that this country will be the one that actually kind of become more competitive compared to the other countries? What should the government focus on?
Thank you. Can I jump in here? Sure. So I guess trying to touch on, because this is similar to the previous question in some ways. Indonesia has not been super friendly to foreign investment. There are some foreign ownership restrictions on certain categories. For example, like e-commerce, when it started to really rise in Indonesia, suddenly there was a foreign ownership restriction imposed. But the current government, who's just been re-elected, and when I speak to ministers in Indonesia now, there's a concerted effort this side of the year to remove any blockers from foreign investments, any blockers. So they're actively making it far more easier for foreign investments to come into Indonesia. And the reason for that is they realize that the size and scale of the problems and the ambition requires a lot of foreign capital to come into Indonesia, right? So basically it is becoming more and more conducive, and from an Indonesian perspective at least, the government is making a concerted effort to making it far, far more conducive for foreign owners to basically enter Indonesia. I guess the other point is, from the previous question, is from an Australian perspective, I sort of always feel that Indonesia is somewhat neglected, and Australians tend to sort of mirror or sort of look towards the States as the key market. Like, a lot of startups in Australia are like, yep, we're going to do this, and first stop is open a headquarters or a branch stateside. When actually the amount of opportunity in Southeast Asia is so abundant, it's not funny. But one thing that I think for investors, Australian investors specifically looking to enter Southeast Asian markets, is your tolerance to risk, right? So I think, like, traditionally Australians are a bit more play it safe, for lack of a better word, a bit more complacent, right? If we're very honest, right? So entering an Asian market where there's a difference in just language, a difference in culture, but actually the reward size, if you crack the market, is so many times the fold that trying to enter one, like a little bit of America where it's far more competitive as well. Where here the level of competition is less, but the market size is huge. Just overcoming your thoughts on like that risk factor of, okay, I'm going to enter a market where things are probably a bit more opaque, where black is not necessarily always black. You need to be comfortable with that sort of opaqueness when you enter Southeast Asian markets. But if you can crack it, the rewards are huge. And coming back to which market and which market in Southeast Asia is trying to be the best or sort of the most attractive. Obviously, I'm gonna bias and I'm gonna say Indonesia, right? But there's a few reasons for that. So if you look at, from a tech perspective, right? The biggest unicorns in Southeast Asia are from Indonesia. The unicorns attacking other Southeast Asian countries are from Indonesia. Right, so you see, for example, like Traveloka, if I'm not mistaken, have just entered Australia as well, right? Gojek has entered Vietnam, Singapore, Thailand, etc., right? Because the scale of the population here, if you have product market fit in Indonesia and you solve all those cultural nuances, they are very much applicable to other markets across Southeast Asia. So you can test fastest here. This is why, for example, like Facebook uses Indonesia as a testing bed, right? So from an investment perspective, I would very much, yes, there is an appalling lack of Australian investment coming into Indonesia. In the crypto space, it's even worse because we're such a niche. But yeah, holistically speaking, like I see the Indonesian Australian community in Indonesia, it's not as thriving as much as, for example, like the Japanese, the Koreans, and the Chinese are investing far more heavily in Indonesia than Australians are, and that's, I guess, a big opportunity currently going to waste. So if you are looking to enter Indonesia, I said first thing, stop looking at other developed markets and start looking at Southeast Asia, and get comfortable with like operating in an opaque environment because it's still being shaped and molded, right?
I actually don't think that you need world domination. So, it doesn't actually need to be one country. The one that I think is an absolute superstar is Singapore. Now, it was no accident that Google and Microsoft, Azure, and AWS all put their cloud data centers in Singapore first. So what is unique about Singapore is you've got amazing regulation. Now, I'm a rules-based person. I love Singapore. I'll stay an extra 2 days just to read all the signs to find out what I'm not allowed to do. So I actually think Singapore did a really good job of that. However, if we look at the Philippines, the best place ever for outsourcing, ever. Superior to India, superior to China. We all still want to go to the Philippines when we're looking at outsourcing, particularly when we're looking at business process outsourcing, or what we now call BPAS, business process as a service. So Philippines knows what it wants to be famous for. Competitively, everyone wants to have data scientists. I love my data scientists. They're brilliant, but they can't write. So they can give you lots and lots and lots of predictions, but they cannot give you an insight. They'll give you some warm thoughts on a page, and that's about it. So we actually need to think about, what do we want to be famous for? Your governments, what I think Australia is slow in doing, and where I think our ASEAN colleagues could really ramp it up, is digital citizen. And the other place is health. Who has had a really crap patient experience recently? I fell off my horse and got concussion. I had to have an MRI. When I finished, the guy gave me my films. And I said, that's fantastic. What should I do with these? And he said, oh, there's a CD in there as well. It's so brilliant to have to buy a CD player as well. I mean, where the heck are you going to find one of those, right? So what should your government be thinking about? What do our governments need to be doing? Get the patient experience right. Healthcare is something we need to spend effort and time on. I reckon that's where ASEAN could absolutely blow Australia out of the water. And the other thing Australia suffers from is the not made here syndrome. So what we will tend to do is go and find all the really smart people, and we will actually go and get the people, the IP, and the organisations and buy it into Australia. That needs to stop.
Just a quick answer. I agree with you that every country in ASEAN would like to be a hub, same as Thailand. Thailand would like to be the start-up nation, would like to be the medical hub in ASEAN, aviation hub in ASEAN. So if every country think about themselves, every country can be the hub, because you will be the center for everyone. But now, everyone can connect, so it's not like the location-based anymore. So everyone can be the hub. And from my opinion, this year Thailand will be the chair of the ASEAN. Yes, it's the chair of the ASEAN, and next week will be the ASEAN Summit in Thailand. And we will hope that we will have some like the RCEP conclusion or something. Yeah, and the theme for this year is the Advancing Partnership for Sustainable. So we will move forward together within the ASEAN country. We will move together and don't leave anyone behind. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think that, a common theme, that has emerged through these discussions is the potential, the opportunity, of operating in the ASEAN region. Whether it's the size of the region, given the population, whether it's the speed at which the transformation is occurring, there's many opportunities. A recent report, just to put some statistics to that, by Bain & Company said that in 2018, digital economy penetration in the ASEAN region was 7% compared to 16% in China and 35% in the US. And they expect that by 2025, the digital economy opportunity will be worth $1 trillion in the ASEAN region, which is 20% of the expected ASEAN GDP at a time of $5 trillion. So yeah, I encourage you, as individuals, as businesses, to think about exploiting and utilizing those opportunities in the ASEAN region to grow your business. With that, thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight. I hope you all found it an insightful discussion. And we have a few tokens of appreciation for our panelists and also our hosts. So presidents and chairs of the organizing partners, I'll get you guys to come up and pass those gifts on. Yes. Well, Stephen, yourself, I'll keep it, I'll hand it over to Francisco for safekeeping, and when you're next in, we'll pass it to you. But thank you for joining us.
I also do take crypto, by the way.
All right. So Martin, you're gonna hand it over to.
Yeah, I can give it to Stephen next time I go to Jakarta.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Nick, to George, thank you. And then Kenneth to Alison. Thank you. And last but not least, we also have a gift for our host, Haymarket HQ. So to Lauren, thank you so much for hosting us at this event. Yep. Right. Yes, and Stephen, this is for you, but we'll pass it on to Francisco for safekeeping. So Francisco, make sure you don't need this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, I'd also like to acknowledge the organizing committee who have helped bring this event together. So there's Martin and Alex from PIT, Professionals in International Trade, Nick and Francisco from the Australia Indonesia Business Council, and there's Kenneth and June from the Australia Malaysia Business Council. Yeah, and Chris and Adam. But most of all, I'd like to thank you all, as audience members, for joining us tonight. Without which, this event would not be possible. And I hope you have found this thought-provoking and insightful. Please share your feedback from the event, to the organizers, to your respective business councils or PIT. What went well, what didn't go so well, and more importantly, what topics you'd like discussed at future ASEAN-related events going forward. As mentioned, we have another round of networking, so there's drinks and more food. So stay on for another half an hour. And thank you. I wish you all a great evening ahead.